we must be led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible. They are forcing leaders to have nature debate regarding economics, leaving out the breaching method's roles with this, while leaving out the breaching method roles with the design of suburban homes before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies and early states, because roles with it entrenched were stayed, otherwise that body was sensed, including if it was a body as a majority of people, including if it was everyone black pupils. And that was adapted to. That's why sickly distinctly and sickly non-distinctly, even though it was sickly non-distinctly against every single person, including our founders. No, as we were, I was read that we were supposed to describe our founders as James Madison and the people behind him and his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan and to force the other founders to be. And Native Americans are automatically already our founders too. See, president slash chief as cipher too, because our founders did not have free speech. And the breaching method measured and measures and maintains self-valued roles with use slash uses of America's founders' words, leaving out what they said about it, what they declassified about that, and calling that evidence. So say I don't see evidences. That's why we learn some things at notes, and something that and the convictions made by summaries with history and the sciences individually grouped together. They contain quality. They contain criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence, quality slash qualities, aspect slash aspects, in nature slash natures as hypercriminal. No, for example, wrongdoers. There is mass wrongdoing, only allowed. Otherwise, that body is sensed, and they are building upon roles with this self-value at each age, employed to pretend that the integrity of the branches or of the counters to it of all natures, including overt criminal enterprises and private ones originally instilled. The difference between them sequence with the same sequence ships at the same time, with names at all sides of criminal civil cases and the interbranch, even when they're not a part of those cases at the same time. Because of how the breaching method shows people to speak for difference slash differences, which is tactical ulterior from how nature does. Because nature is showing us we have the same colorized and different colorized at the same time. Because nature's identity itself is showing us its difference slash hyper difference. Because we have two eyes just like other species, distinctly but non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but further hyper simultaneous. That to the extent we could discern, but that comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, showing us this, and the only increasing value of it, which comes with revelations too. But see, this is a system unabridged. We're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. We're supposed to appreciate where and how and why we have more. We have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. We have readings of statutes originally instilled. When they read about their difference with them, they left out how those locations were and are, therefore all the names still collusion slash s. And like, for example, blaming other things, others, ourselves for things our founders and nature itself communicates to blame on a human fact, human nature breaching method. Again, for example, that's one of the things true always that slavery was about. And nature itself shows us to contemplate what are the things that are true always that slavery was about. And one of the answers is a human fact, human nature breaching method, a torture, extortion, slavery method that was sickly, non-distinctly against every single person. If anyone would mention that, they would have to do so syntactically the descriptions of it, and they would have to use people's names. And they would have to be sensed by other people, far short of where they would have. In other words, all they have to do is get to the principles themselves, of the law when it's unabridged and not denying, like for example, those collusions. The courts of New York City and the police forms of New York City and a certain type of victim slash hyper victim with the government names too. Rise to speak on subject treatments exactly the way the breaching method knew they would. After having replaced, after having had roles self-valued, having been replaced with our founders and with nature itself increasingly was and is actually communicating at all locations slash s, like for example at New York City, especially because of its roles with descriptions of American history, where it's still being used to measure and maintain the suburbs, let alone the cities. But also right where New York has roles with that part where, for example, I learned in notes there were laws against everyone based on if they were found out to have been speaking about things outside of internationally monitored conversations, which is relevant to the foundation of suits and ties, counters to them and exceptions that have stayed roles, blaming other things, others forcing other things, others ourselves blame for things that nature itself and America's founders and other countries' founders communicated for us to blame on the hypercriminally foreign influence. They didn't use that phrase, but they would have been sensed if they did. And the breaching method knew that more and more they're only capable of blaming things like criminal foreign influences for things that are properly blamed on hypercriminal foreign influences, like why and how people get away with using their own difference as black, as claimed, and or their narratives regarding how they believe they feel about prejudice. Because anyone of any nationality who tries to address the black people's rights of eyes replacement, they meet members of all these differences jump into our conversations dishonestly and with his relative because we have to use this as evidences. How many kids need to point out that and how they could discern the lies, the delusions, and the criminal foreign influences slash hypercriminal foreign influences of people speaking for the law, regarding it, and especially differentially if they are law or not, including if they are overt criminal enterprises or not. If people A through Z have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, reading of values like voting as collusion slash S with the same predicate acts with facts methods they pretend to be against. In other words, oligarchy, they need all these things to waste time where they have the kids in the classroom and adults in classroom. And they have all kinds of methods of keeping with that cause too, blamed on other things, others themselves. Then they were shown they need to hide that at other locations too. In other words, a whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University have roles with the World Trade Center attack and with a whole bunch of different countries and people from UConn and Trinity College that have roles with planting evidences on my street from other areas with with people with the name Kalo, O'Brien, and Smith. And they have roles with foreign and domestic medical families that through people's lifetimes. They have roles with agencies like CIA, state police families, FBI, and co-defendants of theirs. A whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, have roles with Newington locations associated with an Eric Jensen and a Ray Kalo, who have roles planting evidence on all sides of my house, with increasingly with proven child abusers, leaders of kids tied to them, and more still. And their roles with names at the World Trade Center and next to it. One of the spots next to it is the Ninth Circuit Court. All sides of a case in that day, right before the attack, and the court itself have been planting sequence shifts. These names have been doing this interstates through time. Joe DeMoro, Ray Collo sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles of people on multiple people at different corners on Church Street and exceptions on that street involved with them also through time, involved also on all sides of campuses with names, planting evidences with judges and prosecutors and their family members in foreign countries at the same time. And more child abusers, leaders of the kids, and people on off religious spots. A whole bunch of people tied to a Joe Aiello. I don't know where he went to grammar school. I don't even think he went to my grammar school, but a whole bunch of people from my grammar school are involved with former mayors, involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime and predicate acts with the kids, and connected use/S of untimely deaths years apart, and tied confessions and demonstrations of people involved with a house tied to both of them, with the name Halperin, that has people involved. I don't know their names. They know my name. With that had roles with Homebreak in there with a Heather Hansen. And then she told me about that and showed me, and there was nothing in the house when I was there. And I left a mark about with spray paint on the rug, and they didn't tell on that because it would have shown what I recorded. Also, them doing before and after that. In other words, and wire crime methods with the Wethersfield Police, with other police departments, with the DeMoro, Cololo, a whole bunch of people tied to a Jonathan Maiano and his brother Alex Maiano. I only saw him one time. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He has roles with people from Providence, Rhode Island, and Connecticut boxing gyms. They have roles of predicate acts with increasingly on all sides of my house with people with the Wethersfield Police. And as Wethersfield Police and other police agencies associated with them. These are people with foreign and domestic military involved with Afghan leaders and kids, involved with, intercultural. They have Mendez police families, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties to me as a kid, and then as an adult, roles with falsified police reports, wire crime acts and methods, where the police forms and courts have been fabricating conversations with police, with kids, and then as an adult at the Wethersfield Police Department. And as a kid, I wasn't even at the police department. As an adult, I made one sentence to my Saudi friend, changed it, switched it over, pretended I had communications with one of the Mendez police. I never had a word of conversation with in my life. So he's also involved with a Phil Cololo and people with the name Christine, or one person, but it's more than one with the name Christine. And by Bob Chase's confessions. It's also the educators of them, more so. It is too also names from off the campuses they went to. That they have recorded forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, self-value roles, repeating fake things, tied to the people who planted predicate acts consciously into databases and conversations with their teachers. Former the FBI and other agencies have more people involved with the news that have been planting predicate acts roles with various natures of organized crime, and sabotage to life and the quality of life of all ages of the people of all locations, areas, and states relative to what's also conscious use/S of the many ways it orchestrated the suburbs only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and of needing to self-value roles with means and needs to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, even though they're only criminal insidiousness natures of positive value nature means to cause that out of nowhere instead while replacing how nature is less and less, showing us the ability for us to cause for ourselves positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures and means out of nowhere. See, evolution is using positive and negative with demonstrations to us that our systems have stayed tactically ulterior from through criminal foreign influences and through tactical delusions that would not be had anyone followed mandated law when this is addressed. A whole bunch of natures of logic, including the people who know the best of their subjects, including of the law, are relying upon other types of experts dishonestly. Because already those locations were employed to collusions, clearer than day. So we must not leave out the name of the scientific value of breaching method. And when we do that, we are shown that there are means to and are needs to make an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise act, the ACE Act, and for injunctive / hyper-injunctive reliefs at countries A through Z. I'm not a lawyer. Also, it is recorded hyper-evidentially. Lawyers, all sides of criminal civil cases, and the courts' names and the police forms and their sources, their family members, their neighbors, the news at the same time. They're planting the same sequence shifts, self-valued roles with it. And nature's used as styles, pretending not to realize. There are people with the name Trantolo and Trantolo. I barely had conversation with them at all. They pretend I made a conspiracy theory as one of the things they do when they make fake conversations with people. And they make context where people have to go up online. So one of the things they might do for a start is list a whole bunch of things and names, because these are names that with people we don't even know, they brought them up. They also make you mad by doing the opposite at the same time. There are people on pawn side don't even realize their confessions while pretending other, as rules with child sex offenders proven before they were caught, with their syntax regarding how they pretending they know people they don't know, and their neighbors involved, with Rocky Hill schools and Weathersfield schools, with their educators and more students who colluded with Central Connecticut State University intelligence. Increasingly, there are people with Central Connecticut State University in Connecticut who have predicate acts with intelligence from Weathersfield. Increasingly, as collusion /s, also with use /s of names at every campus I went to, who are connected by themselves, having lied to the people who influence them, but sometimes the people who influence them to make it look like they know me, spread lies to people. The intelligence communities at countries A through Z are only capable of doing this because of their roles with use / uses of differences, tactical ulterior from nature's use / S of them. And I recorded how I'm going to demonstrate this, for example, as proof, with hyper evidential has to be used. We don't have to call it that, but we could discern. In other words, there are evidences generated from the recorded proofs that a Trantolo and Trantolo has roles with judges and prosecutors and their family members and all kinds of natures of organized crimes and criminals, and names next to body dumping spots and campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, federal evidences rackets, putting the same sequence shifts at the same time, pretending, as styles, speaking for nature in the law in ways dependent upon self-valuing criminal and citizens' natures of positive treatments, like truths and facts used as lies in the past, having been increasingly, while now in the active and to come, they cannot afford to have discerned that and the identity of integrity that is capable of being through appreciation of the word unabridged Constitution, and where and how there is a amendment that gives us, and as nature does too, obligated rights to not have to list how we have more rights that are too many, that are too many numerous to list to back our convictions when we don't agree with interbranch, like especially when they're lying to our faces while tactically delusions raw and putting us in fake transcripts with themselves. A whole bunch of people at New Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts and Connecticut's District Court have roles with foreign and domestic families involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders at each with names at each campus I went to. Increasingly, educators of Ray Reynolds have roles with drugs and medicines crimes with kids with foreign and domestic medical families involved with identity thefts, also with state police and people interstates involved with him. There are people with the name Violet too. I never even had a class with Mark Violet or Mike Violet. In other words, I never even saw them around campus. One time, they timed a couple times to make when I was going to walk by and make a statement to me, make a fake exception. It has something to do with their roles interstates with the Neville family too. Mr. Neville is increasingly involved with people along Route 3 that goes by the state judicial branch offices, right through cities, and with people on Route 175 along it, involved with predicate acts with kids, putting fake things in databases, keeping collusions with foreign and domestic medical too, while tactically delusions raw. Has something to do with people at and next to Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, involved with a Dean Judd's kids and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and foreign and domestic military before the World Trade Center attack. I found out how much I'm finding out more while there's silence too. That's why you're making a map, because one of the things that connects these people are people who time where I was going to go to put fake and changed natures of ties to me, including online with this Joshua Julian, who pretended he partied with me online. He's involved with people with some KKK themed, black themed, and interreligious spots themed, like Jewish themed, with the Wethersfield Police Facebook page, and with Hartford Hospital's Facebook page, and the Britain Superior Courts with child sex offenders too, and with their kids involved, of judges and prosecutors. And there's a officer named Hunter, who the family members and intimate ties of Hartford Courts, and himself non-verbally demonstrated, confirmed. In other words, he's involved with apparently he's gay too. And I'm not gay. I've never been. I don't want to be with a man. But that was also influenced by others, where he pulled me over and he grabbed my chest, like in other words, and he broke the law, has collusions with the FBI and people at Central Connecticut State University with state police families and intercities Connecticut the police departments involved with the names Cololo and O'Brien and tomorrow. And there's an ILO involved with them, and John Mayano involved with them with sequence ships and with identity thefts and frauds, planting evidences with and fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, to kids and adults with a former Mayor Gold and other mayors associated with Saudis too. They forced collusions with them. And my Saudi friend, they confessed to her that a Scalora, even she made it up, Claudia Scalora reportedly had sex with Joe DeMauro, reportedly her cousin, for her roles with John DeMauro too, with people at the World Trade Center and people involved with their roles with Saudis through the Connecticut campuses. These are also people, Rick Faglione, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's roles with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, with Kevin Harris and other people tied to the family members of a Kevin Harris and of a Justin Levinskis, involved with judges and prosecutors in foreign countries, planting evidences with some black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and like a Tim O'Brien is involved with them, planting evidences with foreign and domestic medical families at the corners of the streets on the grammar school I went to since I was a kid. And then as an adult, it has something to do with the corners of the streets on the principal child offenders campus. I caught them with that campus brought up to me by Rob Rodriguez on Facebook, who's one of the ones with a Rob Rodriguez and a Mike Roberts, sought me out from other parts of the area. They have roles with town line locations through time. Also with Daryl Chandler and his family involved with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, state police, interstates. And as people involved with Canada and Mexico and Cuba, involved with psychiatry, putting fake transcripts in databases, using and having used all natures of investigators, remotely criminally foreign influence. Harvard Hospital's Institute of Living has a dozen of people or so associated with the Colo and the Smith family and O'Brien family with wild crimes with the Wethersfield police confessions too. Switching and forging names though, refusing to get on paper. And with Judge Killian, Judge Smith have been speaking fake things, sequence ships, digital crimes with them, with child sex offenders, and an upskirt picture guy on off the shopping centers principal. Also at the school, with more involved with that, also with the names next to the campuses. Harvard Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed with others. There are people with the name Pierce, a Jody Pierce and her family, and the different families associated with a reported breakup between them. They don't even know me. They try to make a fake exception. And it has to do that's one side. Next, it has something to do with their roles with the community center, and all side names on all sides of it have been planting on identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences, crimes with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names at the same time. And in foreign countries, overt criminal enterprises and their educators. I never had a class with a Subby Bajerio in my life. I never saw him out. He's he's increasingly involved with people at Central Connecticut State University, who are and the state judicial branch offices that has roles with people next to Central Connecticut State University involved with predicate acts with them, and with judges and prosecutors with Rick Sienna Faglione, also with foreign and domestic medical families. Also, tactically delusions raw, sequence shifting, identity theft, fraud, slanders. They influenced, he confessed that a Leahy family and a Brian Silver influenced them, well, like with courts, judges, and prosecutors, family members, and on foreign countries at the same time, influence people to fake ties to other kids, do little tricks right when they're coming around a corner, not see it, punch them in the ear. And that's the only the person they don't even know them. They don't see them around. Then years later, they forget. It's forgot. Make a quick instance. They're planting evidences, and they're not, and they're changing and faking what's actually recorded. That's why there's a whole bunch of ways to discernible. They're leaking this. People that aren't supposed to be leaking their roles with Russians in Ukraine, like with the Peruta family and the fire departments. The Wethersfield police have wire mail crimes and federal evidences crimes with businesses at the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway and Wethersfield Police and Wethersfield Pizza. But you can't call them to the police because they already faked transcripts with the phones, and they faked conversations with me as a kid that weren't at all, and as an adult that weren't at all too, and they faked it with the stealing my words with the Saudi. Also, Melos Mendez police are involved with the ones with the Saudi confessions, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People, the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, forced Saudi's collusions with them and with the judges, prosecutors, and their family members next to Central Connecticut State University. They also have fake passions and emotions regarding their uses of their differences, like if they're Puerto Rican, if they have some black, white, female judges involved with a detective Samuda, involved with a whole bunch of people tied to a Heather Hansen, involved with his abuses of women and little girls, and people tied to him involved with that. Wire crime, mail crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders, falsified police reports, switching names to officers intercities. Increasingly, people from these courts have roles with East Hartford locations as something they're ducking behind. with the forging and switching names, intercities, putting falsified police reports for the same arrest, pretending they make mistakes, switching officers' names, making a proper promise of appear, hand it off to the mother of someone. I'm a grown man, you're handing off to my mother. In other words, and they've been spying on me with these people since I was a kid to use those truths for lies. These are people on all sides of criminal and civil cases, incapable of making the right outcome in a case. Look what they're speaking about, what witch trials are about. Witch trials about, no matter if the entire thing was made up, they're about the breaching method that was entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies, so deep and well, and rolls with it that they had to leave it entrenched as states. In other words, even the subject, slavery. Yeah, it's slavery. That means there's predicate acts and facts that are discernible. You guys leave it off the predicate acts and pretend things that are debatable that aren't. And you leave the quality styles of logic, names, uses, in other words, then they pretend it's personal when you bring it up. They're changing and faking what we say when we bring up predicate acts. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves. They increasingly have roles of people with the names Scalora, Demoro, and Cololo, and Oliveri, and with Elm Street and Rocky Hill, recorded confessed and Weathersfield. Elm Streets and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill have roles with them also with those state judicial branch offices and corrections offices with those same names. Mike Pandolf has roles with the people with the and there's increasingly people tied to a Casper family is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders too, with the mayors and people with the buildings next to the state capitol. Involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders has something to do with their roles, planting evidences with names they're from other areas, and at that area tied to the corner of Fox Hill and Carriage Hill Drive. I don't know their names. In other words, these are people tied to police that are bringing up these locations still while they're pretending other. They're pretending they want the people's privacy. They're bringing it up. Timothy O'Brien, Ray Colo, and his grandfather brought it up with their confessions, with communications being distinct from what is said too. No, that's involved with them with federal evidences, crime methods, like switching and forging names with the roles with the cops and courts, and planting evidences with names on all sides of cases, roles, criminal and civil, and as roles with the names in the World Trade Center attack spot in Manhattan. The same names involved with them are involved also with Washington, D.C. through time. Has something to do with their roles. A whole bunch of people tied to two speech class teachers I had in high school and their students and the differences of the adults or the kids with that, or as the professional title. Because those differences, don't forget this breaching method employed to be used by itself, roles with other things, communicated for nature's communications with difference. Again, we have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. For example, too, the other species bodies have the same quality aspects in nature as us distinctly, but not distinctly too, and simultaneously, but again, per that further hyper-simultaneous. For that which has us all knowing that other people and ourselves, we know three parts of time are grouped because nature is projecting that to us. There is an extent of the time past we know is true always. There is an extent of time present now that we know is true always. There is an extent of the future to come. Even if it doesn't get here, we know that is increasing value here now always. Like the seasons. In other words, but we have appreciated the seasons and all things through systems and more as systems technical ulterior from the one that is its own positive onto itself also, where and how also Earth has a special difference, where it is equally positive and negative to all parts of itself, equally, as the lasting forever nature it is. But as the temporary / lasting, it has, differential care for the parts of itself that simultaneously, because it values them distinctly, Their increased value distinctly also simultaneously gives peripherally to the other rest of them. That's what our body's complete identity is. But not just because of us, because of it. So it's showing us to long clean water, to to long clean food, to long nature's identity of relationship to itself, where it communicates. And like for example, with negative value nature progressions acts and natures are positive ones, including how we respond to it, which is, in other words, there are not even worms walking out of the soil anymore because they aren't present in the soil for too many decades. All the food of the earth was taken away to keep a landscape theater and suburbs as a contrast to the overtly, because the suburbs were designed overtly slash insidiously, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and below safety and capable of being standards, capable of being before cars were invented, let alone now. Before America's founders were even born, it was designed to got no, a little too small. In other words, the rooms. In other words, we have means to make space means and to afford nature of infrastructure out of nowhere way easier. In other words, and change the cost of things and the needs to compete with price, while leaving out the breaching method, because that's mostly the needs for that are only employed by the breaching method. It just appears other because only known are breaching method roles or role sensing. You know, someone's challenging the fake integrity of the branches of government, for example, or the intelligence tied to them, with readings of statutes relative. Sequence shifts are involved. Criminally pointable readings of all natures of statutes are only capable of being. They have replaced James Madison's communications and plan, and then our presidents after him, and then him as a president too, leaving out what they declassified after that, and self-valuing simultaneously that having been, while being and having been used remotely as tools, the identities of the names of the people of the sciences, because they are at the same time while overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and collusion slash S with the worst use slash S of the worst negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, causes, and roles sustaining it, and things sustaining it at all locations, everyone within states that no one wanted. And it's the same one most consciously furthering terrorists and criminal enterprises. On a mass scale, they change and fake what people say. If it doesn't defend the identities of the law the way the breaching method allowed and maintains only capable of being, because that's simultaneously, you know, keeps people, in other words, presidents that haven't had help, that has not been criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. They're fishing too. You know, when they speak about how many things are declassified that are classified that are not even classified. In other words, they just have to hide lie progressions because all the countries in the news are shared here and there on campuses. Now, when you pay attention to what's being and having been going on those campuses, actually, it's a whole bunch of predicate acts with facts methods, identity theft, fraud, slander roles, and natures and methods of organized crime that everyone has missed, only because the guys are incapable of following mandated law relative to it. That's why you have roles forcing child abusers, leaders, and kids, and more. And they want me to pretend it's personal. I'm going to have to use the names of other leaders and kids that I'm having communication with. They have obligations to get online and communicate with me. Get the Wethersfield police on paper if you want to do it private, and get the parents on paper, the ones that fake conversations and fake ties to me, and the ones at the court. New Britain Superior Court has men and women and their kids has a Brian Silver, has a Brendan Leahy, also has doctors involved with judges and prosecutors with delusions and fake conversations with me. Transcripts faked through the mail too. So, in other words, I can't do business until I get this taken care of. These are the same names rolls with them. A whole bunch of people, Rick Samapaglio, and other people from other areas have roles planting evidences on my street with a Brian Silver, and people from the Brisbane Superior Court like Brian Silver, people from Connecticut District Court like a Brian Silver involved, Harper Courts, former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions are people also planting the same sequence ships and ducking it uses of those fake integrity and sides at other locations, spreading the same lies and delusions that they both planted. They're pretending outcomes in case mean what they don't, and they're lying about the outcomes in cases. Roles with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News, involved increasingly with intelligence names next to them, as one's also involved with spots next to the state capitol, which Fox Connecticut News is, but also at buildings right next to it. Has something to do with their roles with this too. All kinds of social security scams, and people are pretending to be against other relative to their life progressions and how they've been covering them up because it's recorded how they are shown. Needs to hide things past, active group now and to come, where how they were shown how to speak for the law, speak for integrity. When did the branches of government have integrity? See where the highway in the parking lots block at Fox Connecticut News, in the building next to it is involved with social security scams too with them, with more scams and more stealing of money every single day, thousands stole. Then there are streets and houses on them in Hartford, Connecticut. So you have people about speaking about black and white and trying to counter things like poverty as collusions with the differences between the parties, how they defended that as the breaching method showed them too. And how they defend their worth. They're involved with scams, more money has been stolen from Social Security just in 1 year than, in other words, than we need, because in many ways too, if we had anything taken care of, any value that was being used purely to counter things purely, they're making issues to keep as collusions where they make subject treatments, leaving out exceptions in exception nature. They tell judges they can't legislate from the bench, except the bench never stopped legislating. The branch never the branch never has stopped having collusions at all locations /s. They bring them as shock and awe, and then they back them into that bench, and they have a whole, like for example, Superior Courts. They have a whole bunch of people come in there and have to arraign them. And what they're doing, this breaching method's name, even the breaching method itself, as a scientific value, its name was and is inseparable from all natures of crime scenes and criminals, and roles originally and still time collusions with them meant to branch are and have been through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. Roles of that criminal insidiousness nature / hyper criminal insidiousness nature itself, forcing that to be the only quality of fact human nature with convictions, with syntax by conviction, whether formally or other, to the difference of that is used to hide behind. Many Americans, we want to demonstrate, we know, it's more than the right to vote we have. We have rights that are too numerous to have to list. They're pretending that we only have the right to vote in either a Democrat or a Republican or exception. It's that. It's because they have scams where they cover up once they get people at a place, they just put fake things and they keep they don't get into writing. They interbranch, they forward switch names, search for more things, spread or get the police, get them, they give them promotions, then they start getting promotions. They don't want to do these things for the breaching of it, but that's really the reason why they're giving, because they have to have life progressions. So Chet Casper has something to do with the buildings right next to the state capitol, and his roles with the Mike Daly and involved intercities of Connecticut and with Shoreline, no, and his educators and he has roles with a former Mayor Gold with some Jewish themed and interreligious themed nutbags with child offenders, sexual and medical, identity thefts and frauds, also with other mayors and their roles with people involved with Saudi attackers, and people that used to live near me that worked with the campuses that are also involved with them, with their kids and with themselves, even if they're no longer alive. Increasingly, Wethersfield, Connecticut, and Intercities, Connecticut, had roles with people from Washington, D.C. and New York City with the World Trade Center attack, and other states and other countries, including Saudi Arabia. They forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles, collusions with predicate acts, intercities and interstates with people with the name Scalora. They're educators. They said there was a I don't even know her name. There are people with the military, intermilitary, involved with Scalora and Domoro and Coloa with planting evidence, and sometimes the people of their hierarchy, sometimes their own family, are the ones criminally foreign influence. The difference of that is used also. The difference of their judges and prosecutors involved with wire and mail crimes with them, and untimely deaths. A whole bunch of people from Harvard Hospital have roles with untimely deaths, with doctors' collusions with it, and body dumping spots of murders at the same time, intercities, like is recorded. A whole bunch of people tied to Greg Kyler and the reported murders and narratives and confessions tied to intercities are the ones with the Dean Judd's family members. And the Dean Alford is involved with a Joshua Stryker, with a Darth Vader as one of the police at Trinity College, who's involved with my neighbor, Ray Colo, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. A whole bunch of people like a Paul Zano has roles with judges and prosecutors, with people with the name CM Faglione. I never really saw them together, but CM Faglione, in other words, in Maiano, John Maiano said that his roles with Rick CM Faglione's father, interstates. He has roles interstates with people with the intelligence community in foreign countries at the same time with child offenders, leaders of kids. He has roles with the daughter of a Mr. Murphy. He was a principal. I only had love for her when I was at that grammar school. And her boyfriend, Kevin Harris, is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and predicate acts, fake ties to me, trying to plant evidences with people at Quinnipiac University and with the kindergarten class teacher I went to. People associated with the Ray Reynolds involved with them, and with houses next to that campus, like a Demora house. People with the name Finelli and Schedule involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal crimes with judges and prosecutors and their family members in a whole bunch of different countries at the same time, and their intimate ties. I never had a conversation with a Schedule. They pretended passions and emotions at one of the Middletown locations involved with them. Also with a Phil Colo involved with more with the principal child offender, and more with the upskirts on Facebook involved with him and with others at the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fox Hill too. And they have people with all natures of groups and differences, including the sexual groups, and then they pretend it's personal. In other words, and to hide behind, because they know it's about their roles of predicate acts with the corners of the street and with the news and the various police departments. there are people on Facebook that walking in, and like when I walked by the high school, when I was jogging, I went for a jog last year on the day that was, in other words, there was a night out, and they said there was a concert at the community center. So I jogged from my house to there. I was about 4 or 5 miles, and then back. But it was there was, I don't jog to the office, so it was like nothing for me, like seeing. But when I went by the high school on the way back, there was a woman who made an expression like, "Oh," and I don't know her at all. Something to do with it. She's one of the ones on Facebook who is planting fake nature that ties to me with a Joshua Julian, who's one of the ones involved with predicate acts with the name Cololo, and retired police chiefs from Weathersfield with the same house/S. Ones with the name Smith, increasingly involved with I don't even know what campuses Smith brothers went to, but they increasingly have roles of people that have been planting predicate acts behind my back at every campus I went to, and there are time connections between them. Ray Cologne, Joe DeMore, and Eric Jensen and Mike Roberts recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with federal evidence as crimes, identity thefts, and broad sequenceships with people from Middlesex Community College and interstates with state police all along the Berlin Turnpike is another thing that connects them. Eric Jensen said there's a Spider family involved with that too. And the Spider family, I only know them because they sought me out to pretend other. And people made class placements. People who were put in class placements have been doing it for criminally foreign influence reasons. And these are also people with differences. They have a couple of the Italians make them walk by and pretend they know you. And they also do it for the people. In other words, I had nothing to do with the Mazzucatos. These are also people that said they have, they're accessing people's cameras and spying on people per them in the fake conversations they had with me. The pretending I spoke about that. So in other words, they're doing that. Or they have that involved with them with predicate acts, even if they didn't do it now, because they fake conversations with me about it. Like a Leahy family and ones with the name Lombardo are increasingly involved with a whole bunch of people at the Weathersfield Community Center and spots next to it, with people named Pierce, also next to the campuses, like involved with identity theft, fraud, slavery, people tied with there's a Matt Pierce. I was nothing but nice to him. I barely had a conversation with him ever. In other words, he was never rude to me. We never had communications. I don't know if that was his mother. Looked like someone might have been Pierce, and she's associated with some kid, like a young guy, young man, associated with some of the people involved with the Weathersfield town offices and the Weathersfield Police Department, where it used to be and now, involved with predicate acts on my area from other areas. They're putting fake things in databases together. And they have rules with some federal evidence of crimes with the doctors and lawyers at Hartford Hospital, where they're fabricating, they have criminally foreign influence uses of my signature, and there are proofs that they've been fabricating my signature and other people's too, relative to their roles fabricating transcripts too. So they're also pulling the medical side more and more into roles with all kinds of natures of organized crime and criminally foreign influence use, /S of their database /S, and their roles with various natures of courts and prosecutors, switching names, forging names, fabricating conversations too at the same time as with them as collusions at crime scenes, and increasingly totally made up to force people there to cover live aggressions. After when they cause people to do things unusual, or like to yell to get people, force people to call the police. I repeated many times, please call the police. I wouldn't tell them why until I forced people to call. I never got to talk to anyone. They faked conversations with me. And then 2 times after that, they set me up to make it look like I yelled again and forced me there for mental evaluation. And they put more people stacking on more fake things. and more fake exceptions. In other words, in demonstration of the same thing they're pretending other with it. That's what they need to get on paper. I still haven't been able to respond for what I asked help for. And in other words, increasingly I found out was because they had collusion/S before I ever yelled no. And I never did anything like that in my neighborhood. They had collusion with a Kevin Dillon and a whole bunch of people tied to him, planting evidence on all sides of my house since I was a kid. I should fear God now. Oxy. Please get them to do what's right. Tell Judge Napolitano they're hiding this. There are proofs that Judge Napolitano can't see this because he's got too many, not just because he has too many people on his Facebook page. I mean, on his YouTube channel. Because before he left Fox Connecticut News, Fox Connecticut News had/has roles with them. These are also names intercities involved with the spots next to Fox Connecticut News, with a whole bunch of natures of organized crime and predicate acts with a whole bunch of police connected, and the courts involved with them individually grouped together with a whole bunch of other countries' criminal enterprises, predicate acts with facts, tactically delusions raw, fake motivations too. That's why you need to get them on paper, one name and sequence, please. Vaccines.